The Democratic Party exists for the American people.
The United Democratic Party is our greatest strength.
We have the right policy to stand on the side of justice.
This is a moment for activism.
You're never too young to stand up.
We can change the world.
We need you.
Yeah,
that's
be
right.
involved.
That's it. Get out there and fight.
Hey, hey, hey. All right. Welcome to Democrats Live. Democrats Live. Today we have Jason Kander of Let America Vote. Let's give it up for Jason, everybody. Also, former Missouri Secretary of State, a big job, chief election officer in the state. And we also have our own lovely, super duper political director, Amanda Lierman, everybody. You're here. So let me just remind everybody, 43367, call that number, type in commit to M's 1T, and we'll send you back information on how you can get out there and vote. We're working on I Will Vote. We're trying to drive up turnout right here in these days. Only a few, how many more days before the election, Amanda?
It's 160, or I'm gonna mess
No. She's closer than I would have been, let me tell you.
Yeah, it is 170 something, and I should know that answer.
It's more than 10.
It's more than 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys get in there and check it out. Jason, Let America Vote, man.
I agree.
What's up? Tell us.
Yeah, sure. So,
How many times have you done that?
a few, but I enjoy it more and more each time.
Yeah.
So Let America Vote is an organization I started a little over a year ago with the mission of creating political consequences for voter suppression.
Right.
The Republicans use voter suppression as a political strategy, and it's really important that we make that distinction, because what they try and convince everybody is that it's a policy difference, like it's taxes or health care. It ain't ideological. It's no different than the decisions they make about which TV shows to run ads during or whose doors to knock on. They do it to win elections. And the whole idea is the folks who are hurt by their policies, they're just going to eliminate those folks from democracy. That's how voter suppression works. So for the longest time, voting rights advocates, oftentimes also known as Democrats, have been, we've been fighting this just in court, and that court fight is still super important. But what happened when Jeff Sessions took over the Department of Justice and Donald Trump got the ability to appoint the judges is that we had to expand the argument beyond the court of law and into the court of public opinion. That's what Let America Vote is. We're a boots on the ground campaign that knocks on doors, makes phone calls, and beats Republican politicians who are making it harder to vote, because when there are political consequences for it, they slow down or they stop doing it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So, Amanda, how important is it to fight for the vote? I mean, with all this voter suppression out here, talk about what Jason's work means to you.
Yeah, the Republican strategy is definitely to disenfranchise voters, especially people of color, younger voters. I've actually sort of got my organizing cred as a youth organizer. I worked at Rock the Vote a bunch and used to always contact your Secretary of State office for information about elections. But they are working tirelessly and around the clock and spending billions of dollars to prevent people from voting. So we have a huge voter protection operation here in the building that we've actually revamped to be a year-round effort, because there's definitely a lot of organizing to do with these election officials. We also need to make sure that people, the number one question that we get when people talk about voting is just, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know where to go, or it's as simple as making sure that people know not just where their polling place is, but what time is it open? Can you still, if there's a line, what does that mean at the end of the polls closing? So people just don't always have that, what you would think is basic information. So the sort of education piece tied to protecting the right to vote is also critical. And obviously going into this midterm cycle, it's terrifying to think about, we're countering the fact that there's going to be drop off in the midterms as we expect. But it's just really scary to think about, particularly the places where the Voting Rights Act has been rolled back. It's strategic, and those are all the places that we really need to win.
Well, you just got out of North Carolina. You gave the speech at the Forsyth County Democratic Party, which is chaired by my brother, Eric Ellison.
Very handsome county chair. It was super impressive.
Yeah, he got the looks, and I got something else. I'm not sure. But
I thought y'all were twins.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. But, you're from Missouri. We know you've had to fight for the vote there.
Yeah.
And in North Carolina, when Republicans took over a few years ago, they got rid of early vote. They got rid of early registration, like if you're if you're 17.
Right.
Tell us about the fight to protect the vote in places like North Carolina and other places.
Well, the Republicans decided quite some time ago that they didn't have to convince people of their ideas if they could just change the electorate, right? And it's interesting to step back and sort of meditate on that for a moment. I mean, we're here at the DNC, right?
Yeah.
So what that says to me, among many other things, is it's okay to take a moment and take some pride in the fact that, like, I like being in the party that says, you know what, we think we got the better argument.
Right.
And I think that says a lot. You know, if you imagine if it were a court case, they're saying, hey, there are 3 people that you can put in the jury box. It's our 3 neighbors. You know, that's sort of what they're saying. And we're saying, go find 12 people in the hallway and put them in there because we got the facts on our side.
Yeah.
So you start with that, and then you recognize that it's cynical, and frankly, it's un-American to say we're going to just keep certain people from voting rather than reach out to those folks. You know, not to put too fine a point on it, but like, we've already had this argument in this country.
We kind of we've been there.
Yeah.
We've seen this movie
multiple times.
Yeah. Like American heroes marched across a bridge in Selma facing down dogs and batons and hoses. And so my point with all of this is that this isn't a return to, you know, the old fights. This is the continuation of the civil rights movement. It just never ended, and that we have to be vigilant. We have to stay in this fight.
You know, there's a guy named Ari Berman, and he wrote a book called "Give Us the Ballot," I think is the name of the book, and he kind of makes the point that after the Voting Rights Act was passed, the people who saw themselves as on the losing end of that, they never stopped. They kept on rocking and rolling, and they trolled the country to find the right case to attack the Voting Rights Act with Shelby County, and they just never really stopped. And you know, I can tell you that in Minnesota, for years we've been fighting back this photo ID.
It's one of the only places in the country where somebody's actually bothered to make the argument against it. In Minnesota, they put it on the ballot and you beat it.
We beat it, man. And I tell you, when they first put it on the ballot, we had a Secretary of State named Mary Kiffmeyer, who's now a state legislator, and she was pushing this photo ID on the argument there were roving bands of Hmong people, or Mexicans, who were just going to ballot to vote. The fact that there was absolutely no evidence didn't deter her. She did it anyway. She said, well, just in case. Well, what we found out is that not only would low-income people, would disproportionately people of color, but also seniors and veterans would be negatively affected. The initial polling on this stuff was up in the 80s, but folks, I'm gonna tell you, some good folks, good Democrats, by the way, said, Keith, we're just gonna have to try to beat it in court because it's too popular. We said we don't care about the odds, we care about what's right and wrong. And we went to war on that thing, and we beat it, man. We beat them every single month. We chipped it down until we finally beat it, proving that you can change your odds if you will get in the fight. I mean, you know.
It's amazing how many arguments you can win when you bother to participate.
You know, it's funny. Give it a shot. You know?
It's also so interesting. I always think about, you know, the strategy, unfortunately, lends to us showing up too late in many cases, right? So the value of also investing and organizing year round is you can have conversations with state election officials about, you know, we need more polling locations in these communities, or we need early voting, right? And it's literally just about organizing them earlier, but we just are never in those communities, in time enough to do that. And that's one of the, realities and dynamics that we've been trying to figure out is how do we start those conversations earlier, because you can really make a difference and create more opportunities for people.
Well, there's a consistency here. You know, you and I sat down and had a conversation 2 years ago.
We did.
About the brilliance of what you've done in your district and in Minnesota to say, hey, I'm not just knocking on folks' doors like when I need their vote.
Right.
And what that is, here in Washington, I mean, I'm from Kansas City, I'm visiting, but I know how people talk, right? And they would call it constituent service. It's customer service. It's old-fashioned customer service. It's these folks are the people we're supposed to serve. And so the point that you're making, I think, is a good one, which is there's a difference between seeing voters as customers of the electoral process, making sure they have a convenient, positive experience,
Right.
and then seeing them as criminal suspects.
Right.
And that's what that's what the other side does. They're like, oh, you want to vote? Uh-huh.
Right.
You know, like, it's
Right.
so,
Right.
they're looking at them
Yeah.
as criminal suspects.
Yeah.
And you know, in a
So
day and
true.
age when I can pull out my phone and I can watch the Royals, unfortunately probably get beat given where we are right now, but either way I enjoy the game. I can watch the Royals on my phone no matter where I am, but I got to wait in line for 2 hours to vote.
Doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we should be able to
Right.
cut down that line.
Right.
So
On a machine that maybe you don't trust.
Yeah, it's customer service.
So,
you know?
couple of questions. What's your take, and I mean this both of you, the folks in Florida actually got felon reenfranchisement on the ballot. What does this mean in terms of just enfranchisement and extending the right to vote to more Americans?
Yeah, you know, I think the first thing is to recognize that all these laws we were talking about, photo ID, they're all sort of Jim Crow-esque laws.
You said it.
This is a
They're not
Jim
kind
Crow
of.
law.
They are.
Well, but my point is yeah, you're right. But the only distinction here is like this is a law. This is literally a Jim Crow law.
It is.
that
They
we're
wrote it
talking
for
about.
the
The
specific-
other stuff is sort of it's inspired by
Right.
But this was a Jim Crow law. It's still
Right.
there, and I think it's incredibly important. Desmond Meade. Anybody who's curious who's watching this should Google Desmond Meade. He's
Yep.
the organizer of the effort in Florida.
Maybe we'll get him on something called Good Trouble one day. What do you think?
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
He's an amazing, inspiring guy. He's a formerly incarcerated individual who started this whole thing, and now it's really on the brink of enfranchising a lot of folks. And at the end of the day, one, we ask people to return to society and be a part of society, and we should mean that.
Yeah.
You know. And the second thing here, I've just never met a single person who said, you know, I was going to commit a crime, but I'm worried I'll lose my right to vote. Like, it's just not a thing anybody does.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Also, talk about changing the electorate in Florida, right? To your point,
It's like
right?
1.8 million citizens.
a lot of
Literally,
folks
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Well, one thing that I will say, you know, back when I was in the Minnesota State Legislature, I got the impression that that you know, maybe Democrats could possibly have an advantage with folks in this area who might vote for us. Not true. We're going to have to fight for that vote like we do every other vote, because I learned that a lot of Republicans will go to jails and do Bible studies and other things. And so my caveat to Dems is that if we win here, we have to court this electorate the same way we would any other electorate. There's no just, oh yeah, they're going to vote for us. No, they're not necessarily.
Right.
And there's a lot of folks in rural Georgia, a lot of white people, a lot of people of all different backgrounds who are disenfranchised because of this. So, but I'm excited. I think no matter who it helps, it's just good for the country.
Yeah.
It's just good, just like same-day
Yeah.
voter registration.
Right.
In Minnesota, we've had Democrats win. We've had Republicans win. We've had independents, you know, Jesse Ventura win.
Right.
And
Right.
yet, you know who advantages it? Who's advantaged by it? Whoever gets out there
Right.
and talks to the electorate.
Which is why Let America Vote is so great, because
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
It's. I mean,
I
it's
agree,
science.
obviously.
Just that when more people vote, Democrats win.
We do, but also
You do have to work
democracy
for it.
wins.
Yes.
Democracy wins.
Right.
Democracy wins. Look, you know, I'm one of those folks who I will never, ever, ever support a piece of legislation just to help my party. I love my party. I'm proud to be a Democrat. But somebody said, "Would you work with Trump on a bill for infrastructure?" I said, "If the bill was a good bill."
Right.
That's important. If it's a good bill, I'll work with whoever to help the American people. If it's a bad bill, I'm not going to support it just to be bipartisan, because that's just a show. But good legislation is good legislation, and we should always be working for it. So hey,
Working for the people.
for the high fives on that. So let me just ask y'all this other thing too. You know, I know that folks are sick of hearing about Russia, but it is true that several states and cities, and including the Democratic National Committee, that there were folks who tried to tap in and hack voting systems. Is this something for us to worry about? What's being done about it?
Well, I think that the most important thing, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, is we need to get some people in charge who actually want to do something about it.
Right.
And that's what's fascinating to me, or I guess I would say is what's disappointing to me, is that the Republicans have actually made this partisan. And
It's too bad.
and it's not, I mean, like, I think about this. My younger brother and I used to get in fights all the time, right? And I was bigger than him, so he's bigger than me now, so we don't get as many fights.
Those
Yeah,
younger
we
brothers.
feel the same way.
I'm way more
So do
agreeable
little
now.
sisters.
But my point is, like, when we were kids, like, we'd get in fights, you know, and we'd throw punches or whatever. But if we went outside our house,
Right.
and somebody from the neighborhood came over and they picked on my little brother,
Right.
I was going to kick their butt.
Yep.
And that's how politics is supposed to work among patriotic Americans.
Yes.
And that's how it usually has. And I'm so disappointed in the Republicans who don't understand that this is a family.
Yeah.
And we can have our fights, but when folks come around from another street and they're trying to mess with the family, like, we're all together.
Right.
That's
We
how
should
it's
be.
supposed
I
to
mean, we
work.
should not let a foreign. We let us fight it out.
Right.
Right.
But don't bring some folks from overseas to mess around in our elections.
Right.
Exactly.
You know. So what are we doing to protect the electorate from the cyber threat? We always know that they'll put out stuff like I was in Milwaukee one time and I saw a handbill and it said, Republicans vote on Tuesday, Democrats vote on Wednesday.
Right.
They said if you have unpaid parking tickets, you can't vote. You might be arrested at the polls. So that's kind of like
Yeah,
low
the
tech.
misinformation is one thing.
That's voter suppression.
Yeah,
Totally. And
but
yeah,
now
it's
we got
smart.
this thing with going into the machines and all this kind of other stuff. Is this something that we need to worry about? And what are we doing about it?
Go ahead.
Definitely. I think, in even just talking to state election officials across the country, there are now more and more people that are approaching them with like new tools and technologies that they've been more skeptical of because they're just, like, what do we trust? What do we not trust? How do we create a healthy voting experience and safe voting experience for people? So I think a lot of people are grappling with that question right now. There's obviously an education piece for the voter, but there's also educating people about what are the voting mechanisms to bring people, to bring to the different locations across the country so that people do have access again to a safe and trustworthy voting process.
Sure.
We have to look at election equipment as what it is. It's critical infrastructure in this country.
Right.
Sure.
That is never invested in until it's dead,
Nuclear plants are something that we know that bad guys may want to get in there and do something bad, so we secure it. Air travel, we secure it.
That's right.
Our election system is critical infrastructure to our democracy and to our country, and we should secure it.
Right.
Well, there's no
I mean,
doubt.
there's a whole television show called Scandal about this.
Is that right? I gotta watch that show. So
I only made it a season and a half. I was like, I can't.
I mean, it's way too
It's just too
dramatic
much.
now,
It
but watch the first couple episodes. It's all about that.
is that the one with Olivia Pope in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that I.
Yes.
So I will vote. I will vote. Let me tell you that the Democratic Party is, we want to reach out to 50 million people. That means through direct knocks, through calls, through video, through social media. We're trying to raise up the turnout. 2014, the lowest turnout since World War II. And we have to reverse this trend.
Yeah.
I will vote. What do people need to know about it?
We have created I Will Vote to be that sort of one-stop shop for anyone to go through their entire voting engagement experience. So everything from taking a commit to vote, to registering to voting, or to vote, to getting all the information you need for Election Day with voter education. Again, the voter protection work is there. And then obviously in the weeks leading up, we will do everything we can to find every single voter and get them to the polls on Election Day. Right. Keith and I will be driving buses ourselves.
That's right.
Lifting people to the polls. This is a huge opportunity for us, a huge year for us. And to your point, there's, always midterm drop-off. So we're definitely trying to counter that. We are trying to counter the voter suppression and disenfranchisement that takes place across the country. The other thing is that 40% of the voting eligible population just doesn't vote. So in 2016, 55 million people woke up that crappy day in November and said, I'm just not going to go vote today. And so we need to inspire a whole conversation about voting and also the importance of voting, right? And help people understand the value, what it means, and that is that it's a part of our civic duty.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I mentioned good trouble a minute ago, and Jason, Kander, you are getting into good trouble. We like that. We like good trouble around here. Yeah. We have another person who is holding it down in like Spokane, Washington. Young woman, she's out there. She's organizing in sort of a reddish kind of part of the country. She doesn't care. She's organizing people, and her name is Maria. And we want folks to get to know Maria. So, are you ready for good trouble?
How long can we be patient? We want our freedom, and we want it now.
When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to stand up and find a way and to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
My name is Maria Beltran. I am the Central Washington organizer. I work in Yakima. I was born and raised here. My parents immigrated to this country, I want to say 25 years ago. I came back after graduating from Gonzaga. And I really was driven by the factors that my community was really suffering. And I wanted to make sure that I came back and I used the tools that I learned in college. And I think doing this work with the Democrats is really going to make a difference. We have volunteers come in almost every day to make calls. We have events going on almost every weekend. Washington is a special place, for all of us. We are leading in many ways, and I think our organizing program really reflects that too. Not only like the diversity you're seeing of candidates, but also like the work we're doing. We're talking to neighbors, we're talking to folks who are really being impacted, and we're gonna win big up and down the ballot this year.
That's awesome.
So, Amanda, Jason, we want folks to know, Maria is a young woman. She doesn't have a big profile, but she is a star, man.
Yeah.
And we got stars like that all over the country. People say, where's the next, and then they name somebody who everyone knows. Bottom line is that person wasn't always that person. At one point they were in an office in rural Washington or somewhere, organizing people on the ground, and we want to inspire people to be that. One question before we turn it over to the audience. We as Democrats don't really pay attention to our faith traditions enough. Sometimes we're just very material, and we don't think about what inspires us. It is this month Jewish Heritage Month. You're a person of the Jewish faith, and you're also a heck of an activist. How does your faith inform you? How does it inform your activism?
I had a rabbi once who said that it's not our role to make the world more Jewish, it's our role to make the world better. And I think that plays out in my life quite a lot. And
Tikkun Olam, right?
It's Tikkun Olam, that's exactly right. And I think that the way to me that squares with my philosophy when it comes to politics and what I think the world ought to be like, I'm pretty proud of the fact that our party is one that cares about people even if we don't know them. And so when I think about the criticism so often from the Republicans is they see that and they'll call it bleeding heart liberal guilt. I think it's just having a sense of unity and duty to one another. And to me, that's very consistent.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's also Ramadan. So
it is Ramadan.
What your faith means to you.
Well, right now, Ramadan is when we fast all day long. And from before the sun comes up till after it goes down. And, when you think about all the people who don't have a meal, fasting will remind you of what that's actually like. I'm doing it voluntarily, but other people are not, and it makes me, really sympathize with what it means to be hungry in this richest country in the world. We still have people who are insecure, people who are hungry. And it also reminds me that, we need to slow down sometimes, reflect, contemplate about that unity. And I'm glad that we are this party that, really welcomes all of us in all of our different traditions. We have Democrats of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, and we're unified in our core value that we, liberty and justice for all. We all belong here. We all have a place. And so, let's get the audience into this thing. Hey guys, y'all got any questions? Because you're such a shy, retiring bunch of people. What do you got for us today?
If you guys have a question, please raise your hand.
Hi, thanks so much for coming, Jason. Also, Amanda. Jason, I know that you have a background as a veteran in the military, and obviously, as Democrats, we want to let military veterans know that we're here for them as well, and that our values are here to help their life in the military and when they're finished as well. So could you talk about your experience and how that's shaped your politics as a Democrat?
Sure. My experience in the military has shaped the way I see politics.
Just a little bit about the military, sure. and then the politics too.
Well, my experience in the military has everything to do with who I am as a father and as a person, let alone as a politician. And I think more than anything, what I took from that experience is the realization that this is not a game, that there are real world consequences here for real people. And there are a lot of folks in politics who grew up in poverty. They grew up with real adversity. I am not one of those people. That is, and that's a super important and valuable perspective. It's not my perspective. My perspective is that of somebody who grew up comfortably, who had the fortune, who was blessed enough to, the first time in my life I was ever on the receiving end of bad decisions made by politicians. I was in the back seat of a vehicle in Afghanistan with no armor.
Right.
But that's not a hard luck story. I got into my mid-20s living outside that wake. And so what I think I realized, what I know that I realized from that, was that I have a duty to all of those people who grew up with that emotion of feeling let down by people in charge, and that being one of the earliest memories. And so I'm really in public service because I want to serve those people, and I think you do that not by following the polls, you do it by changing the polls, you do it by leading. Absolutely. That's how it's affected me.
Tell us a little bit about what your rank was, your MOS, all that.
Yeah, so I was an Army intelligence officer, and I got out as a captain, but prior to that as a lieutenant when I was in Afghanistan. I did anti-corruption, anti-espionage investigations.
We could use that set of skills.
I found that, unfortunately, I got home, I got elected to the state house, and I got to Jefferson City, and while I did not think I was in physical danger, there was more similarity than I was comfortable with. And that's really what's inspired me to do a lot of the work I've done.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And Vote Vets, other veterans organizations, we believe in our partnership with them, and we're grateful to you for your service. My son's an active duty military right now. And he's a 68 whiskey. He's going to be a nurse, but he's a combat medic now.
Wow.
We're super proud of him for doing what he does. So let's get some more questions.
Very grateful.
What about over there? Come on now, guys.
I have a question.
Oh, we got more over here.
So everybody talks a lot about the presidential election and Donald Trump's so bad. And I think it's important, or it's easy to forget that we have one of the most important elections in American history coming up in 6 months. My question is actually mostly for Amanda in terms of organizing and stuff. How we looking?
How's it going, Amanda?
Keith sort of alluded to this earlier. I think things are looking good, but that does not mean that we, can let our guard up. We have to really double down on our organizing efforts, and we've been out there early and often just to make sure that we're having real conversations with people about the issues that matter to them, the values that matter to them, bring them into the conversation and giving them an opportunity to talk and for us to listen also. And I think the sort of establishing key relationships with people, investing in community leaders across the country, that's our strategy right now, so that when it comes time for the future conversations and the future asks, right, those folks are ready and a little bit more willing to make sure that they are doing what they can in their own communities. Keith said this earlier, we can and will not be taking any vote for granted. So we will be out in the community. We have, our staff is already doing that. We are organizing people. We have organizers that we've been actually funding to make sure that we can, make sure that we're having these conversations in the important states that we all know that we need to win this fall. So we have work to do for sure, Kat, but it is happening and we are excited. I definitely want to emphasize the fact, though, that we will not take any vote for granted.
But we've flipped a few state house seats.
No, it's amazing. And even this conversation just reminds you of the importance of the state legislatures and the critical role that they have in all of the decisions when it comes to voting in your state.
Are we up to 41 now?
I think it's 41, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
41 state legislatures. And just to remind everybody, if you got same-day voter registration or you got all kinds of restrictions on voting, that's because of the state, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why the Koch brothers and everybody focused on the state level for so long, is because they figured out if you can control the machinery at the local level, you control everything all the way up the system.
It's also incredible and a very good reminder of the importance of every vote. Representative Ty won in Pennsylvania by 92 votes on Tuesday night.
92. Hey man, we've had some good luck stories. Let's not let people forget about Alabama.
It's amazing.
Virginia,
yeah. We've got
New
Janae,
Jersey.
who is one of the heroines.
Janae was a heroine out there. Let's hear it for Janae, everybody. Well, hey, this has been another edition of Democrats Live. We've had Jason Kander. Jason, thank you for all that you're doing. Secretary of State. Let us vote. What's the website? What's the Twitter?
You can go to letamericavote.org. You can find me at Jason Kander.
Okay, now check that out. And Amanda
Yes.
Brown Lierman. There you go.
You might be more of a fan than my own mom, Keith.
Well, I'm like a huge fan of yours. But also just look,
likewise.
Well, let me just tell you this. We always do this show, and you all don't see the folks on the other side of the camera, but I just want to give a big fat shout out to Kat Skiles, Kayla Jeffers, Heather Reed, Mitch Molaski, and Caitlin Mitchell. You guys make this thing happen. Thank you all very much. And with that, come back next time for Democrats Live.